Hello everyone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself lying next to the person you once couldn't stop thinking about, yet feeling more alone than when you were single? You share the same bed, the same home, the same routines, but somehow not the same fire. You look at each other across the dinner table, and instead of longing, there's silence. Instead of curiosity, there's predictability. Instead of touch, there's distance. This is the paradox of love after marriage. We marry because we crave safety, belonging, the comfort of a home. But the very things that make love feel safe are also the things that can quietly kill desire. Intimacy is not just about sex. It's about closeness, attention, the playful energy that says, I see you, I choose you still. And yet so many couples, without realizing it, begin to make the same mistakes, habits that slowly erode passion, connection, and joy. Now, here's the thing. Intimacy doesn't disappear overnight. It fades in small, almost invisible ways. The late-night conversations that used to last for hours shrink into quick check-ins about bills, chores, and who's picking up the kids. The spontaneous kiss in the kitchen is replaced by a distracted peck as one of you scrolls through your phone. You stop noticing the little details, the way your partner laughs when they're nervous, or the way their eyes light up when they're talking about something they love. And suddenly, you wake up one morning and realize you are more like roommates than lovers. The mistake here isn't that love has gone wrong, it's that you've stopped feeding it. Because intimacy, my friends, is not something you have once and then keep forever. It's something you cultivate, tend to, and nurture, much like a garden. So today, we're going to explore the top 5 intimacy mistakes couples make after marriage. And let me be clear, these mistakes are not signs that your relationship is doomed. They're signs that your relationship is alive, evolving, and asking for your attention. And when you see them for what they are, you can begin to change them. Let's begin with the first mistake, perhaps the most common, and the one most of us fall into without realizing it: taking each other for granted. When you first fall in love, everything is alive. You notice everything: the tone of their voice, the way their hand brushes yours, the scent of their skin. You pay attention because attention is the currency of love. But after marriage, after years of being together, that attention begins to drift. It's not that you stop loving each other, it's that you stop seeing each other. Think about it. Do you remember the last time you really looked at your partner? Not just a passing glance, but really looked. Notice the small wrinkles forming at the corner of their eyes, the way they hold their coffee in the morning, the way they sigh when they're tired. Or do you mostly see them through the lens of routines? Someone who needs to take out the trash, pick up the kids, or remind you about the electricity bill. Taking each other for granted is a silent intimacy killer, because when we stop being curious about our partner, we stop relating to them as a person and instead start relating to them as a role: husband, wife, provider, parent. These roles are important, of course, but they strip away the mystery, the individuality, the otherness that fuels desire. And let me tell you, desire lives in the space between two people, not in the collapse of that space. When we merge too much, when we stop seeing each other as separate, unique individuals, we lose the very tension that makes intimacy electric. I once worked with a couple where the husband told me, I know everything about my wife. There's nothing new left to discover. And his wife looked at him, almost shocked, and said, you don't know half of me. You just stopped asking. That's what happens when we take each other for granted. We assume we know. We stop asking questions. We stop being surprised. And when there is no surprise, there is no desire. So how do we fix this? It starts with curiosity. Remember when you were dating and you couldn't stop asking questions? Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? What's your biggest dream? What's your biggest fear? You wanted to know everything. That's the energy we need to bring back. Tonight, instead of asking, did you pay the bill? Ask, what made you laugh today? Instead of saying, how was your day? With your eyes still glued to your phone, put the phone down, look at them and say, tell me something that surprised you today. Small shifts in curiosity bring back the feeling of aliveness. Another simple but powerful practice: notice. Really notice. The next time your partner is speaking, pause and pay attention. Not to respond, not to fix, but to witness. Notice their expression, their tone, their gestures. Show them through your presence that you are still curious. You see, intimacy doesn't die because two people stop loving each other. It dies because two people stop paying attention. And attention is a choice. It's about making the familiar unfamiliar again. It's about saying, even though I see you every day, I still want to discover who you are becoming. The truth is, we are all constantly evolving. The person you married 5 years ago is not the same person lying next to you today. And if you stop noticing who they are becoming, you stop growing together. But if you remain curious, if you keep discovering, you create a relationship that feels alive, dynamic, and deeply intimate. So the first intimacy mistake couples make after marriage is this: they stop seeing each other. They stop being curious. They stop choosing each other with the same attention and intensity they once had. And when you start to bring back that curiosity, when you make the effort to truly notice, to ask, to listen, you'll be amazed at how quickly intimacy returns. Not because you're doing something dramatic, but because you're reviving the simple. everyday magic of attention. Now let's move deeper, because once you understand that intimacy fades when we take each other for granted, you begin to see another layer, another mistake couples make, one that is even more subtle but just as powerful. So if the first mistake is taking each other for granted, forgetting to really see, forgetting to stay curious, then the second mistake emerges almost naturally from that neglect. It is the way couples begin to replace intimacy with routine. You see, routine is not the enemy of love. In fact, routine gives us stability, and stability is necessary. We need to know that the bills are paid, that the children are cared for, that the groceries will not magically disappear. A life without routine is chaos. But when routine takes over completely, when it becomes the dominant language of your relationship, desire quietly slips out the back door. I hear couples say all the time, "We're so busy. We don't even have time for each other anymore." And I believe them. Between work, children, family responsibilities, and the endless distractions of modern life, intimacy often gets pushed to the bottom of the list. But what happens then? The only conversations you share are about logistics. Who's doing the school run? Did you call the plumber? We need to pick up milk. And slowly, you start to confuse partnership with project management. Project management is efficient. It keeps the house running, but it does not create intimacy. It does not create desire. It does not remind you that you are lovers. Think of it this way: intimacy is fed not by efficiency, but by presence. The very moments that keep couples alive are often the ones that serve no practical purpose at all. The kiss in the kitchen for no reason, the lingering hug before leaving for work, the late night conversation where you share not what you did today, but how you felt today. When routine dominates, those moments disappear. And when those moments disappear, so does the erotic spark. Because routine says, "I already know you. There is nothing new to discover." But intimacy says, "You surprise me still. There's more to you than I've seen." Let me give you an example. A woman once told me, "Every night my husband comes home, he takes off his shoes, sits on the couch, turns on the TV, and scrolls through his phone. We barely talk. We go to bed, we sleep, and then the next day begins. We are like two parallel lines, living next to each other, but never intersecting." Do you hear it? That is routine at work. That is a life where intimacy has been replaced by habit. But when I asked her, "When was the last time you broke the routine? When was the last time you did something surprising for each other, no matter how small?" she hesitated. Because often we forget that intimacy is not about grand gestures. It is about breaking the monotony just enough to remind each other we are not just co-workers in the business of running a household. We are partners in love. Sometimes that means turning off the TV and going for a walk together. Sometimes it means cooking a meal together with music playing, not because you have to, but because you want to. Sometimes it means sending a playful text in the middle of the day, not about picking up groceries, but about the memory of a kiss or the excitement of seeing them tonight. It's these small disruptions of routine that bring life back to a relationship, because routine without play suffocates intimacy, but routine infused with play, curiosity, and surprise, that is where intimacy thrives. Now, let's move to the third mistake, one that often begins quietly, but can grow into a wall that separates two people: the loss of physical touch. Physical touch is one of the most powerful forms of intimacy we have. It communicates safety, connection, affection, and desire without a single word. But what happens in many marriages is that touch becomes functional, or it disappears altogether. When you were dating, touch was everywhere. Holding hands, brushing shoulders, kissing just because you couldn't resist. But after marriage, after years together, touch often becomes transactional. A quick kiss before leaving for work, a pat on the back when you're tired, maybe sex when the stars align, but even that can become routine, predictable, scheduled, stripped of passion. And slowly, without even realizing it, couples stop touching each other in ways that express affection without obligation. They stop hugging for the sheer joy of closeness. They stop kissing like they mean it. They stop resting a hand on a shoulder, or running fingers through hair, or curling up together on the couch. But let me tell you, touch is not optional. Touch is a lifeline. When we are touched by someone we love, our bodies release oxytocin, the hormone of bonding and connection. It lowers stress, calms anxiety, and strengthens attachment. A simple hug, held for more than 20 seconds, can literally shift your entire nervous system. When couples lose touch, they lose not just physical closeness, but emotional closeness too, because touch is a language. And when that language is forgotten, the relationship begins to feel cold, distant, and lonely, even if everything else appears fine. I remember a man who told me, "I didn't realize how much I missed touch until one day my wife reached for my hand while we were watching a movie. It felt like electricity, and I thought, how long has it been since we held hands like this?" The truth was, it had been years of sitting side by side without touching, as if proximity was enough. But proximity is not intimacy, touch is intimacy. So how do we bring it back? Not with pressure, not with obligation, not with the expectation of sex, but with gentle, intentional gestures. A hand on the lower back as you pass in the kitchen. A kiss that lingers just a little longer than usual. A hug that doesn't rush to end. Touch that says, "I see you." I want the exercises I sometimes give couples is called non-sexual touch. For 15 minutes, you simply touch each other without the goal of arousal or intercourse. You touch to connect, to explore, to feel. And what often happens is that intimacy begins to return, not because of sex, but because of closeness. Because when we feel safe in each other's arms, desire has space to grow again. And here's the beautiful thing: touch is free. It takes no time, no money, no planning. It simply takes intention. The intention to reach out, to connect, to remember that even in the middle of a busy life, there is always time for closeness. So let's pause here. We've talked about taking each other for granted, about how routine replaces intimacy, and about the loss of physical touch. These are not abstract ideas. They are lived realities in countless marriages. They are the silent mistakes that slowly erode connection, until one day you wake up and wonder, where did we go wrong? But here's the truth: nothing is wrong. These mistakes are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of being human, of getting comfortable, of letting the urgency of daily life overshadow the necessity of love. The good news: every one of these mistakes can be reversed. With curiosity, with play, with intention, with touch. Intimacy doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. And when you bring that presence back into your relationship, you begin to rediscover not just your partner, but yourself. Now let's continue, because beyond taking each other for granted, beyond routine, beyond the loss of touch, there is another mistake, a deeper one, that speaks to the very foundation of desire. We've spoken about how couples take each other for granted, how routine can replace intimacy, and how the loss of touch can quietly erode connection. But underneath all of these, there is another mistake, one that is often hidden, one that people rarely admit, yet it is perhaps the most damaging of all. It is the mistake of avoiding difficult conversations. You see, intimacy is not only about pleasure and closeness, it is also about truth. To be intimate with someone means to let yourself be fully known and to fully know them. But many couples after marriage begin to avoid the harder truths. They avoid speaking about dissatisfaction, about longing, about the things they wish were different. They avoid saying, I feel lonely. They avoid saying, I need more from you. They avoid saying, I miss the way we used to be. Why? Because difficult conversations feel risky. They stir up fear, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood. So instead of speaking, we stay silent. Instead of honesty, we choose harmony. Instead of tension, we choose peace. But this peace is fragile because beneath it, resentment grows. And resentment, when it is not addressed, is like a slow poison. I have seen this so many times. A husband who feels neglected but never says it. A wife who feels invisible but doesn't want to hurt her partner's feelings. They stay quiet, but their silence is not neutral. It becomes distance, it becomes disconnection, and slowly the relationship begins to hollow out. Avoiding difficult conversations is an intimacy mistake, because intimacy cannot thrive without honesty. We cannot build closeness on half-truths or silence. We cannot create desire in a space where important feelings are hidden. The irony is that couples avoid these conversations to protect the relationship, but in the end, it is the avoidance that weakens it. So what do? We learn to speak, not with blame, not with accusation, but with vulnerability. Instead of saying, you never touch me anymore, you can say, I miss feeling close to you. Instead of saying, you don't care about me, you can say, sometimes I feel invisible and I long for your attention. Vulnerability invites closeness. It invites the other person to respond, not with defensiveness, but with care. And here's the truth: difficult conversations are not comfortable. They are not easy, but they are necessary. Because love is not only about celebrating the best of each other, it is also about facing the difficult parts together. And when you learn to have these conversations, you deepen trust. You create a space where both of you can be fully human, fully real. And that is where intimacy grows. Now, let's move to another mistake, one that is less visible but just as powerful: neglecting your individuality. When couples marry, there is often a merging. You share a home, responsibilities, families, perhaps children. And in this merging, something beautiful happens. You create a sense of us, but sometimes in creating us, you lose me. And when you lose me, desire suffers. Think back to when you first fell in love. What drew you to your partner? It wasn't just their affection for you. It was their individuality, their passions, their interests, their uniqueness. You desired them because they were distinct from you. But over time, if both partners abandon their individuality, the relationship can become too merged, too fused. And in that fusion, the erotic spark fades. I remember a couple who came to me and said, we love each other deeply, but we feel no passion anymore. When I asked them what they did outside of the relationship, they both looked at me blankly. They had given up their hobbies, their friendships, their passions. Everything revolved around the marriage and the children. They had become everything to each other, and in that, they had become nothing to desire. Because here's the paradox of desire. We long for the other, but only when we experience them as other. Desire needs distance. It needs mystery. It needs a sense of individuality. So neglecting your individuality is an intimacy mistake. When you stop nurturing yourself, when you stop being your own person, you not only lose your vitality, you also take away the very qualities that once made your partner fall in love with you. The solution: Reclaim yourself, rediscover your passions, your friendships, your interests. Become a person who is alive, curious, engaged with the world, and bring that aliveness back into your relationship. When your partner sees you fully engaged with life, they are reminded of the person they first fell in love with, the person who inspired desire not by merging completely, but by standing beautifully apart. This is why I often say the best gift you can give your relationship is your own vitality, not self-sacrifice, not self-neglect, but self-discovery. Because when you nurture yourself, you bring fresh energy into the relationship. You remind your partner and yourself that love is not about losing who you are, but about becoming more of who you are together. So far, we have explored how taking each other for granted, routine, loss of touch, avoiding difficult conversations, and neglecting individuality all contribute to the slow erosion of intimacy. But there is one more mistake, perhaps the most silent yet the most devastating. It is the mistake of forgetting to choose each other. Marriage is not a one-time choice. It is not something you do once, on your wedding day, and then assume will sustain itself forever. No, marriage is a choice you make every day. Desire is a choice you make every day. Intimacy is a choice you make every day. But many couples forget this. They assume that love, once declared, will last without effort. They stop choosing each other actively. They stop showing up with intention. And slowly, they drift apart, not because they stopped loving each other, but because they stopped choosing each other. Choosing each other is not about grand gestures. It is about the small everyday acts that say, I still choose you. The smile when they walk into the room, the effort to listen when you're tired, the touch on the arm that says, I'm here. The willingness to keep discovering who they are becoming. When couples forget to choose each other, they enter into a passive love, a love that exists but does not breathe, and intimacy cannot thrive in passivity. Intimacy needs energy, it needs intention, it needs choice. So if you want to revive intimacy in your marriage, begin by asking yourself, how am I choosing my partner today? How am I showing them, not just in words, but in action, that they matter, that they are still the person I desire, admire, and want? Because intimacy is not about what you did 5 years ago. It is about what you are doing now. It is about the daily choice to say, yes, it's you. It's still you. And this, my friends, is perhaps the most important truth of all. Love does not die because of big betrayals or dramatic endings. It dies in the small moments when we stop choosing. But love is also reborn in the small moments when we choose again. So now that we've uncovered these intimacy mistakes, taking each other for granted, letting routine dominate, losing touch, avoiding the hard conversations, neglecting individuality, and forgetting to choose each other, the question becomes, what do we do with this knowledge? Because awareness is only the first step. It is powerful, yes, but it is not enough. Awareness shines the light, but action is what breathes life back into a relationship. And here's the beauty: intimacy does not require enormous changes. It doesn't ask for perfection or for you to rewrite your entire marriage overnight. It asks for intention. It asks for presence. It asks for the willingness to start again, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Think of intimacy as a garden. When you've neglected a garden, you don't simply wish it back to life. You roll up your sleeves, you water it, you prune what has withered, you plant new seeds, and slowly, with care, the garden grows again. The same is true with intimacy. You begin not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent acts of presence. A look that lingers a little longer, a question that goes a little deeper, a touch that says, I want to be close. These are the seeds. And when planted regularly, they begin to grow into something alive again. But here's something important: intimacy does not thrive in pressure. If you say to your partner, we have to fix our intimacy right now, you might create more tension than closeness. Instead, intimacy thrives in play, in curiosity, in openness. So what does that look like? It looks like creating small rituals of connection. Maybe it's a morning coffee together where you talk about something that made you smile yesterday. Maybe it's a walk after dinner, phones left behind, just the two of you noticing the world around you. Maybe it's a few minutes of touch before sleep, not with an agenda, but with the simple intention of closeness. When couples create rituals of connection, they send a message: even in the middle of our busy lives, we choose to be present with each other. And these rituals, small as they may seem, become anchors. They remind you that love is not just something you feel, it's something you practice. And let's talk about touch again, because touch is so often misunderstood. Many people believe that touch must lead to sex, and if it doesn't, then it feels disappointing. But intimacy is not only about sex, it's about the full spectrum of physical closeness. A kiss on the forehead, fingers entwined, a hug that says, I've got you. These are not preludes. They are intimacy in themselves. When couples reintroduce touch without the pressure of performance, they rediscover a gentler, safer form of connection. And from that safety, desire can grow, because desire does not grow from obligation. It grows from freedom, from play, from surprise. Now let's address another key piece: conversation. If you've been avoiding the difficult conversations, you don't have to start with the heaviest subjects. Start small. Practice vulnerability in gentle ways. Instead of, we need to fix our marriage, try, I miss you. Instead of, you don't care about me, try, I'd love if we could spend more time together. Vulnerability invites softness. It opens a door rather than building a wall. And here's something I've seen again and again: when one partner begins to show up with more curiosity, more presence, more vulnerability, the other often responds in kind. Intimacy is contagious. When you shift, the relationship shifts. It may take time, yes. It may feel awkward at first, but slowly the dynamic changes. And perhaps one of the most radical things you can do to rebuild intimacy is to rediscover yourself. Because when you nurture your own individuality, your passions, your friendships, your creativity, you bring fresh energy back into the relationship. You stop looking to your partner to fulfill every need, and instead you meet as two whole, alive individuals. And this is where desire thrives. Desire is not about neediness, it's about vitality. We are attracted to the energy of someone who is alive, engaged, lit up by their own life. And when you bring that version of yourself into the relationship, you awaken not just your own desire, but your partner's desire too. Now, I want to talk about something often overlooked: playfulness. Play is not a luxury in a relationship, it is a necessity. Without play, intimacy becomes heavy, burdened by expectation. With play, intimacy becomes light, alive, joyful. So how do you bring play back? You laugh together, you tease each other, you dance in the kitchen even if you have two left feet. You let yourselves be silly, not because it's practical, but because it's intimate. And it is in these moments of play that couples often rediscover each other in ways they thought were lost. I once asked a couple to remember the last time they laughed together. They sat in silence for a long time, and then the wife said, "It was probably years ago, before the children." And I looked at them and said, "Then your marriage is starving, not for love, but for laughter." Because laughter is intimacy. It is the language of play. It is the reminder that beneath the responsibilities, beneath the stress, you are still two people who can delight in each other. So yes, intimacy requires attention, touch, conversation, individuality, choice. But it also requires joy, because without joy, love becomes duty. And duty, while noble, is not sexy. And here's the final piece in this part: choosing each other daily. This doesn't mean saying it in words every morning. It means showing it in actions. The text that says, "Thinking of you." The surprise kiss, the willingness to listen even when you're tired. These are the choices that matter, because intimacy is not built in the grand declarations. It is built in the ordinary moments. And when you string together enough of those ordinary moments, they become extraordinary. About intimacy, we often imagine passion, closeness, desire, a sense of being fully alive with another person. And yet, as we've seen, intimacy is fragile. It is not something we achieve once and then hold on to forever. It is something we must nurture again and again through presence, curiosity, play, and choice. The mistakes we've talked about: taking each other for granted, letting routine replace connection, losing the language of touch, avoiding the hard conversations, neglecting individuality, and forgetting to actively choose one another. These are not failures. They are reminders. They remind us that love is alive, and like all living things, it needs tending. But here's the truth I want you to hold on to: intimacy can be rebuilt, even if you've drifted apart, even if months or years have passed, even if you've convinced yourself that the spark is gone. Because intimacy is not only about chemistry, it is about attention, and attention can always be reclaimed. Think about this every day. You already give your attention freely to your work, to your phone, to the endless demands of life. What if, just for a few minutes each day, you redirected that attention back to the person lying beside you? What if, instead of asking what needs to get done, you ask, how can I make my partner feel seen today? Small questions, simple gestures. These are the seeds of intimacy. A kiss that lingers, a question that invites openness, a laugh shared over something silly. None of these require extra time. They require intention. And intention is the secret ingredient of lasting love. I often say that intimacy is less about grand passion and more about micro moments. The moments where you choose to look, to listen, to reach, to laugh. The moments where you break the script of routine and create something alive, even if just for a breath. Over time, those breaths add up. They create an atmosphere where love doesn't just survive, it flourishes. And let's be honest, marriage is not easy. It will challenge you, frustrate you, exhaust you. But it will also invite you to grow in ways you never imagined, to learn patience, to practice vulnerability, to cultivate resilience, and yes, to rediscover intimacy, not once, but again and again. So if you find yourself in a marriage where intimacy feels distant, don't despair. Don't believe the story that says, this is just what happens after years together. That story is a lie. The truth is, intimacy doesn't vanish, it waits. It waits for you to pay attention again. It waits for you to choose again. It waits for you to rediscover not only your partner, but yourself. And when you do, when you bring presence, touch, play, and individuality back into your relationship, you begin to feel something shift. The spark doesn't return as a sudden firework. It returns as a quiet glow, a warmth that grows stronger each time you nurture it. Remember, this passion is not found, it is created. Intimacy is not lost, it is neglected. And love is not sustained by accident, it is sustained by choice. choice. So tonight, instead of scrolling through your phone in silence, look at your partner. Really look. Notice their face, their gestures, the life you share together, and then ask yourself, how can I choose them today? And then tomorrow ask it again, and the day after again, because marriage is not a single choice made years ago. It is a series of choices made daily. And every time you choose, intimacy grows. I want to leave you with this: the happiest couples are not the ones who never make mistakes. They are the ones who notice when they've drifted and find their way back. They are the ones who laugh, who touch, who fight and repair, who stay curious. They are the ones who keep choosing. So if you are listening to this and wondering, can intimacy really return to us? The answer is yes, it can. But it will not return by itself. It will return when you tend to it, when you nurture it, when you make it a priority again. Love is not a static thing. It is not something you simply have. It is something you practice. And when you practice with intention, with play, with touch, with choice, you will discover that intimacy is not only possible, but more beautiful than ever. So take this as your invitation. Don't wait for a crisis. Don't wait for the silence to grow heavier. Begin now with one gesture, one question, one touch, and then another and another. Because intimacy is not a destination. It is a daily practice. And if you've been wondering whether it's too late, let me tell you, it is never too late. Not as long as two people are willing to show up, to try, to choose again. So here's to you. Here's to noticing, to choosing, to touching, to laughing, to speaking the truth, to rediscovering yourself and your partner. Here's to intimacy that doesn't fade, but deepens. Here's to love that doesn't grow stale, but grows alive. And if this message has spoken to you, share your story. Tell us in the comments how you've experienced intimacy, when it's been lost, when it's been found again, because your story may be the light that helps someone else find their way back. And if you want more conversations like this, where we explore love, desire, and the complexity of relationships, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because love may be one of the oldest subjects in the world, but it is also one of the most urgent. Until next time, choose each other every day, because in the end, that is where intimacy lives.